You're listening to On The Docket with Napoli Shkolnick.
Good morning. This is Marie Napoli from On The Docket, Napoli Shkolnick, and I am here with our guest, Bruce Plaxen, president of AHA, longtime personal injury attorney. And thank you for coming here today.
No, thank you, Marie. Thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for inviting me. It's really good to be with our members here in Puerto Rico.
So I looked at your website and some history about how you got involved in personal injury. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your path?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a first person in my family to actually go to college, never mind law school, so I had no legal connections. But the story in my family was basically as soon as I could speak, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. There was no plan B. There was no other, occupational choice. I knew I was going to be a lawyer since little. And but being a lawyer means so many different things. As you know, we're litigators, but there's a whole field to being a lawyer, and I didn't know what kind of lawyer I was going to be. And growing up in New York, I assumed I'd be going back to New York and maybe Wall Street or some type of business opportunity. But I fell into I went to American University in Washington, D.C., and while I was in law school, I worked for a small firm in College Park, Maryland, and not expecting to stay there, but I got involved with, I guess, my first mentor, a guy named Eddie Horowitz, who was doing personal injury law and doing a lot of medical malpractice work, and left me to do all the car accident cases and everything else. And that's where I fell into personal injury law.
I find it interesting that you were drawn to the law at such a young age, even before you had the experience of this mentor you worked for. Was there something that you remember that drew you to the law? How did you know at such a young age? That's quite unusual.
Yeah, I don't really know. I don't have a good answer for that. There was no lawyer in my family. My father worked in the Garment Center in New York. I didn't know any lawyers. Mm-hmm. I guess I just thought it would be interesting. And then, in the 1970s, now people go and major in anything and go to law school, mm-hmm. and we have much more well-rounded lawyers. When I went to college, pre-law meant a political science major, and it's a good thing I went to law school because otherwise I don't know what I would have done with a degree in political science, even though I love studying it.
Right.
So I went to college in Albany, New York, and then law school in Washington, D.C., which are both capitals. And I was involved with the state legislature when I was in Albany. And then I worked, a little bit for the federal government in intern clerked while I was in Washington, D.C. So I guess I thought I was always going to do something with government, which is, a little different from personal injury law. But I did end up doing that, and I still do it with my work with AHA, and before that with my work with my State Trial Lawyer Association in Annapolis, Maryland.
Right.
I was PAC chair for almost 25 years.
Wow. So I was telling you before we went on air that I'm second generation, and I worked in the law for a long time. And my father actually came to the plaintiff's side because he worked defense, and he couldn't stand seeing what was happening to these poor plaintiffs that were injured, and the insurance companies were really not doing right by them. They weren't represented, most of them, and I guess he really cared about his clients, and that's really what I took from my father. And in reading your website, that's what resonated with me about you, that you have such an individual care for each one of your clients. How are you still able to do that with managing the firm? It's quite a balance to make, because you have to support the firm, you have to support your employees, you have to make payroll, and it's a wonderful thing, and why I assume you got into this business like we did. How do you balance that?
the first answer is I have magnificent law partners. And I don't know if you ever got to work with your dad. I work with my son.
Oh, nice.
Is one of my partners. And I have 3 partners in their 30s. So they are experienced enough that they are fabulous trial lawyers and really, really good lawyers, but they also are young enough that they have all this great energy. We have a really great energy in my law firm. So it allows me to do my AJ work and my work in Annapolis, testifying on bills and changing the laws in Maryland. What I find interesting about, you talk about the job satisfaction that we have, and I talk about it in some of my speeches at AAJ, that we change lives, that we really, really do change lives, and we change the world, one life at a time, one case at a time. Sometimes, major class action cases, even more. But when I went to law school, the career office wasn't sending people to PI firms. They were sending them to big law.
Right.
And I don't remember a lot of people that I went to law school saying, I want to be a tort lawyer. I want to be a personal injury lawyer. That term didn't even come up.
Right.
People look to go to Wall Street. They look to go to save the world with criminal law, environmental law, domestic law, international law. No one. I don't remember anybody wanting to do what we do. And yet when I go around and I talk to law students now, it resonates with them. I think they're pulling away from big law, and they're looking at job satisfaction.
Right.
And I recently gave a speech at American University, where I went to law school, and they had about 100 law students for lunch, and they brought in pizzas, and I spoke about the job satisfaction we all get when we win a case, when we help someone improve their life. And I said to the group, I said, do you think the insurance defense lawyers get really excited when they win a case and they go home and tell their family, I prevented someone from getting money today? And it really, people came up to me afterwards and said, I never thought about a career in personal injury law. And I got emails afterwards saying, I hadn't thought about it, but I will now. And I think that we have a good story. We have a story, a narrative that we help people, and it really, I think, resonates with the generation of law students that are out there now.
Well, I think that's very true. So my daughter is at NYU Law School right now, and she worked last summer for a big white shoe firm, and she wants to come directly to us. She's interned with us. She's interned with white shoe firms. She's the top of her class, and eventually she wants to come and be a third-generation personal injury because there is a passion for it. But she does tell me that her classmates see our cases. We have some of the biggest cases in the country in mass tort and legal-wise. And I do see that they find what we do rewarding and can be passionate about it, not sitting in a library researching, writing, not getting to see the inside of a courtroom. So I think that's really refreshing, the attitudes towards what we do and the changes that we make. When I think it was Jerry Spence who said, corporations don't really care. They don't have a heart. They don't have a soul. They don't have feelings. And all they really care about and function for is your bottom line. And if we can affect that bottom line, we can change behavior. So I agree with you 100%. And it's a great way forward for our young students that we're trying to mentor. Do you see anything negative about well, we've both been in this field a long time. There's been a lot of changes, and that's a wonderful change that I see going forward for the up-and-coming lawyers. Do you see anything negative about our practice from when we started? Well, how long have you been practicing? 40 years, I think I read?
40 plus, yeah.
So what do you see as a negative?
Well, 40 years ago, I would have been called an ambulance chaser, and that term might still apply, right?
I still hear the term, but it's not polite conversation.
No, it's not polite.
Right.
And I was reluctant to even say it on your
No,
podcast.
No, that's fine.
But it's not polite, and it's clearly derisive. And yet, I see when I go to AAJ, I didn't go to my first AAJ convention until I was 40 years old. I opened my firm in 1985. For 15 years, I built a reputation locally, and I didn't know what the national had to offer for me. And when I went, it was eye-opening. It was like you heard such great speakers and people, and the lawyering is so good on our side. I mean, I feel like our
Yes.
lawyers are way better than defense lawyers. I mean, we have the best lawyers, and we have so much to be proud of. When you go to an AAJ convention or a program that we do, and it's not just winning cases, it's like, I'm really proud of the work that we're doing. And I think that's coming across in certain parts of the world. I don't think we'll ever shed the label.
You know, I wanted to ask you about AAJ because you're the sitting president, AAJ. It's a very important position. I know when I was in New York, I was involved in the New York Bar Association. I was a member. I was the first president of the Puerto Rican Trial Lawyers Association, Trial Lawyers of Puerto Rico, which we are AAJ members, the first Puerto Rican association to be members of AAJ. And you talk a lot about legislation. I know in New York and in Puerto Rico, we have proposed and passed legislation in both areas. What is AAJ doing on that front? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, our lobbying team will tell you that 20, 30, 40 years ago, they had to worry about medical malpractice, tort reform, no-fault car insurance, the Chamber of Commerce, things like that. Right now, AJ is tracking something like over 80 bills that have immunities or provisions in them. Our enemies of the civil justice system are getting much more clever. They're attacking financing. In the president's, big beautiful bill, there was a provision that would tax lawyers on loans and they're using their line of credit because they don't want to affect the cases now so much. They really want to just put us out of business.
Right.
So it's getting much more dangerous. AJ plays a lot of defense and protects us. They're basically on the wall of justice, saving us from all this awful national tort reform.
So that we can protect our clients and
That's-
bring them justice when they're harmed.
That's exactly right.
Right.
That's the bottom line, is that we can protect people. And you're right when you said the Jerry Spence quote. The corporations don't care. They really, really just don't care. Their answer is the bottom line. And AAJ is protecting the civil justice system, but also when the opportunity presents itself, looking to change the laws in ways that will benefit and create other causes of action and help victims, such as raise minimum limits on interstate trucking. The minimum limits are too low. They just came out with a fabulous study about state car insurance is too low all over the country. These limits of $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 don't pay for anything. It barely covers your emergency room visit, and it's not enough money to pay claims. And yet these limits were put in effect in the 70s and 80s and
Right.
haven't changed.
I was just about to say they were put in effect so long ago. I think they were put in effect when no fault was instituted. For those of you that don't know, no fault pays for your medical bills and out-of-pocket expenses when you're in a car accident, regardless of fault. That's why it's called no fault. I remember my father thinking that legislation was going to put him out of business.
Well, there are a lot of states that don't have the no fault to pay the bills, and these low limits apply not just to the pain and suffering money, but to the bills. So if your bills are higher than that, and you don't have health insurance to pay it, you're left without even enough money to pay
Right.
your medical bills. It's awful. So,
Right.
I mean, AJ's on the forefront of all of that. We're trying to protect people from, we have autonomous vehicles that are right around the corner.
I know.
And who do you sue on a self-driving car when there's no driver?
I'm so afraid of that. I think that's going to be really dangerous, but we'll see about that. So this all costs a lot of money, right? Having lobbyists and trying to protect and create legislation to help our clients. How does AAJ raise money, and are they effective in doing that?
AJ is very, very effective because we're outspent like 100 to 1 by the chamber, and now someone that's getting into the game is big tech. You know, they have an interest in everything. AI, you know, they don't want to be sued for their AI platforms. They don't want to be sued for AI, and AI is everywhere now. You know, what our CEO will say is, we don't have to have the most money, we just have to have enough. But it is very, very expensive. And we rely on our law firms to give when necessary. And our people our members care very passionately about civil justice. And they're very generous. We have a program called Leaders Forum where firms give annually. We have Evergreen where firms give from some of their big verdicts. They'll make a contribution, a percentage. And then we just have members that were happy that just paid dues.
So if someone wanted to get involved in AAJ, how would they go about doing that? Can individuals get involved, or is it so Trial Lawyers of Puerto Rico is an association of AAJ. How would someone go about that? Do they have to go through a sub organization like Trial Lawyers of Puerto Rico, or can they become a direct member of AAJ? How does that work?
So we have members, you know, every state and territories and even international lawyers have local trial lawyer associations or statewide trial lawyer associations, and many people belong to their statewide trial lawyer association, don't necessarily belong to AAJ. We wish all of them would. So we go out to the state TLAs and try and get them to join. But we also have people who join AAJ that don't belong to their local. Ideally, law firms would have enough resources that they could belong and support both organizations, your local, because we have laws made on a local basis, statewide, and you know, here in Puerto Rico, your tort law, but also help us what's going on federally, because there's so much more going on. And we have to, you know, face preemption with federal law preempting state law. So no matter how good your state law is in New York,
Right.
or you know, if the feds take away your scaffold law or something, it's
And we have a lot of preemption with drug cases, bad drugs, you know, implant devices. That's always an issue that we have to deal with as lawyers.
there's preemption in almost every bill now.
Yeah, it gets harder and harder.
Yeah, you can't put, as a law firm or as a lawyer that does what we do, you can't put your head in the sand and just say my state will take care of me.
So I wanted to ask you about your work with AAJ, and now that you're the president, do you have to take a year off from your firm to travel, make all your appearances, and speaking for AAJ?
So I have been very involved with leadership, and I've known a lot of past presidents, so I was prepared for the time commitment it was going to take. And we have a leadership ladder where you start as parliamentarian, so you take 5 or 6 years to get to be president. So I kind of knew what I was getting involved with. And it's even more work than I thought. And I don't say that, it's exciting work, and I love the work. And I've delegated a lot of my cases to my partners this year. And it is hard for me because I'm still litigating. We have a small firm. There's only 4 of us, and I'm still trying cases. You know, we have very high volume because I do a lot of auto cases and slip and falls and dog bites and one-off cases. But it is a lot of work. I'm on a plane, it feels like almost every week, to a different state, speaking and dealing with the issues that each individual state has, and bringing them, being a good ambassador for AAJ. But it's exciting. Mm-hmm. It's really fulfilling. Being president of AAJ is one of the best things. I think I'm going to look back on my career and just think it's one of the best things I ever did. It's really exciting for me. It's work, but it's something I love. And to meet lawyers around the country that do what we do,
Right.
and to just see the problems they have and the challenges they have, and just be part of the conversation is just so fulfilling for me. So, yes, it is a lot of work, but I'm loving it.
Yes. So well, that's great that you're loving it so much, but you knew you were making this sacrifice really to help other people and to help all of us.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
of-
Well, it's an important cause. It's a cause.
Right.
What we do. It's not just a profession. I feel that representing people is a cause. It's a mission. We talk about our mission a lot at AJ. It's something that we have to do. I mean, just today, someone died in a nursing home that had no insurance, and it was a horrific death. And even after we knew we weren't going to get paid, I got an email literally while I was here in your office this morning that we kept pursuing it, and the state is going to close them down. There's no requirement in Maryland of mandatory insurance, and there were no assets. So we helped this family as much as we could, but there was no money to be pursued. And it felt good that they got cited, and they're not going to be able to
So
hurt
was
people.
that done through your firm, or
Yeah,
was that?
That was not AJ.
That was
yeah.
not. So can you kind of walk our audience through exactly what AAJ does for personal injury, for legislation, how they are protecting the laws? You mentioned a little about lobbyists. Do law firms do you do networking? Do you help people who need a lawyer to find the right lawyer? What exactly is the role?
So AJ is I guess, a professional trade association that
Right.
lawyers join, and it does everything you said. It's helped me network and meet people all around the country. And if I could give any advice to lawyers starting out or doing a personal injury firm, you should join AAJ. It will benefit your firm. It will make you a better lawyer because they have the best education programs in the country, the best networking opportunities. I know lawyers now in every state in the country. So when someone hears about a Maryland accident, I usually get a call. And if you meet people from around the country, they'll send you cases. So it's great for your business. It's also great for your personal fulfillment because you're going to just be involved with so many great projects. AAJ did the largest pro bono project in the world when they put together a group of lawyers, hundreds of lawyers, to represent all the 9/11 victims for free, and got money, and no one took a fee.
So it's funny. I don't know if you know that our firm represented all the 9/11 firefighters and police officers and helped pass the Zadroga Act. Are you talking about the Zadroga Act, filing under the Zadroga Act?
No, I'm talking about it's a real. They can make a movie about this. It's so dramatic.
I think they could make a movie about a lot of our cases.
And they have.
Yes.
And they have. But when 9/11 happened, the airline industry was so concerned, and Congress was so concerned of lawsuits that they were drafting a bill for complete immunity for the Terrorist Act. And none of the victims would be paid because they didn't want the airlines and the airports going out of business. And AAJ said, wait, and they went to Congress and said, we're okay with immunity for saving the airlines, but you can't leave the victims without a remedy. So the idea was to set up a special fund that would give the victims, all the families that lost loved ones or were injured, give them money.
The Victim Compensation Act. My
Right,
husband
right.
helped draft that.
Okay,
Yes.
so you know about that,
yes,
right? So you
of
know
course.
about the history of this.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so, but at that time, the pushback was, this is just a money-making device for trial lawyers because you're all going to take a third of all this money. And what AAJ set up was Trial Lawyers Care, which got pro bono lawyers to do a lot of those cases.
There's also a reduced fee for lawyers that are taking a fee
Right.
on it. I think it's 10%.
Yeah, so.
So,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
generally the plaintiffs, if they were down and below Canal Street for the time period following 9/11, if they have cancer or respiratory injury, it's a covered
Right,
injury.
right.
So I think that's been wonderful for our city. We've helped so many people, and even people who have now moved away out of state. So it's wonderful that you're doing that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go back because we got right into the law and you know, the things that we find so interesting as being career plaintiff lawyers. I want to know a little bit more about your backgrounds. You have such a beautiful video on your website. It was very touching. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you established a firm? I mean, I know it was hard to establish a firm when my father did. I guess it was 70 years ago. And it becomes more and more expensive as time goes on. I think you established yours. What year was that?
1985.
And how did you come to do that, and how did you do that?
So I had been a lawyer at that point for 3 years, almost 3 years, 2.5 years. And was bringing so many cases to the firm that I was working for because I wanted to make myself valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave my card out to every waiter I knew. I coached Little League before I had children. I was active in my community. And I made people, my neighbors, know that I handled accident cases. And I was bringing a lot of business into the small firm I was working for. And I left when I was 26, and I opened my firm with no employees. And I was from New York, so I opened the firm in Maryland where I had no family and no deep connections, no source of business. But I opened in a tiny little office where I answered the phone. Of course, it was a landline back then. I answered the phone.
Yeah.
And I was in every day. And for the first year I was in business, I never went out for lunch because I was afraid I would miss a call with a new case.
Right.
And I licked the stamps, and I bought a used IBM Selectric typewriter. So I could send letters out because there were no computers in the 80s. And, no office used computers. And I remember going to the bank and asking to borrow $400 so I could buy a copier, and they turned me down.
Oh, wow.
So I had to find a way to get $400, and I opened my office. And it's the guy I rented space from just had one office with one desk. He was a public defender, and they were allowed to take second jobs back then. They could work in the evening or weekends. So he said, "I'm only there after 5, Bruce, so you take the 3 drawers on the left, and I'll take the 3 drawers on the right, and we'll share the office." So I actually we had an office sharing relationship. And I remember I advertised in the phone book that I would do home appointments, hospital appointments, and you could call me 24 hours a day.
I remember when they changed that law, you used to not be able to advertise.
That's right.
And
that's
then
right.
they changed that law and made it possible for a lot of lawyers to build a firm.
Yeah, but lawyers weren't running around and going to people's homes and I was seeing people at night. I would see people on weekends. Any way I could do it, and and we still do that. And that's my firm grew. Within a few months, I hired my first employee, and a year later, my first lawyer. And I've kept the firm relatively small, but it grew into a well-respected law firm in Maryland. And I wasn't afraid to take hard cases. I took products cases I probably had no business taking. I sued big corporations when it was just me.
The experts are very expensive in those products cases,
hard.
Right?
It was not easy, but
is there a favorite case or a case that really affected you or moved you, or is just a strong memory?
Oh, I had an interesting case. My first year out, I had a young man who was electrocuted.
Oh.
He was electrocuted. He died. It was a sad case, and he left behind.
How was he electrocuted?
He was in an apartment building, and the custodian in his building, they had to get something off the roof. Some of the kids in the neighborhood had, stolen his wallet and said they threw it on the roof of this 4-story building or something, and they got out this huge ladder. And the custodian in the building got this metal ladder, and while my client was holding the ladder for the custodian, it touched a high voltage wire.
Oh.
And I learned all about electrocution. there's so many things we learn about that
Right.
that you don't know about. I've had a tank case where a tank took out on a military proving ground, took out a whole bleachers full of people. It went off course, and I've had kids get their foot stuck in escalators, and all this science that I
Right.
didn't know anything about. But you and I become experts.
We
at
become
what
experts in every case. And that's one of the things that, in addition to helping people who really have nowhere to turn, is so meaningful. But it's also if you like to learn, and as lawyers, I assume you like to learn, we're always learning because every case is different, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm doing this over 40 years, and yes, we have rear-end auto accidents, which seem the same, but there's always a wrinkle. There's always something different in every case. There's always something really fascinating or some nugget that you get. I remember one of the first cases when I was a young lawyer. Someone was on a ride-on mower, and he was refueling his mower, and it blew up, and he had horrific burns on 70% of his body. And I sued Briggs and Stratton in Milwaukee, and I had to fly out to Milwaukee to take the engineer's depositions. And I learned, I'm not a very mechanical person, but I learned how lawnmowers work.
Well, you hire an expert and they teach you,
Yes,
right?
yes, that's right. That's right.
So how did you grew up on Long Island?
Yeah.
I heard you
Yes,
say.
yes.
Where on Long Island did you grow up?
Belmore, the South Shore.
Okay, so I also grew up on Long Island, and you can see now I'm in Puerto Rico. How did your path move out of Long Island, and how did?
So I went to law school in Washington, D.C., which I thought would be really cool to be in the nation's capital and kind of being around government, because that was really a big interest of mine back then. And this small firm I told you about that I worked for in law school offered me a job, and I thought I'd be going back to New York. And I interviewed with a couple of Wall Street firms. And
There were a lot of PI. I think I interviewed in a PI firm on Wall Street back then.
It wasn't a PI firm. This was like
a white shoe firm.
Yes, yeah. And I'm very glad. I know I interviewed at Skadden Arps. I interviewed
Okay.
at a couple places like that, and I'm very, very glad that that they didn't hire me.
Right.
Because I would have moved back to New York, and I like New York. I still go back to New York, but I'm glad that I made my practice in Maryland. That it just worked out for me, because I stayed at this small firm that I had clerked for in law school.
For those in our audience that want to be able to reach out to AAJ and join, is there any information you'd like to give for them to contact AAJ?
I think you can join online at justice.org.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you Google American Association for Justice, probably not AAJ, but American Association for Justice, it will take you there.
So looking ahead from here, what is your plans after you're president at AAJ?
I will stay involved with AAJ. It's part of me. I just will, even as I take less cases. I'm still going to be involved with AAJ. I don't see myself. It's been too big a part of my life for 25 years now.
Oh, wow. So you've been in it for 25 years before you became president.
Yeah, because I started going in 2001, and it's 2026 now.
And it's a year term?
It's a one-year term as president. It's going too fast. I'm halfway through.
Are you already?
Yeah, I just became president in July, but it's almost February.
Is there any other case that you want to talk about? I know we always have a few.
So earlier I mentioned how we change lives, and I just thought of something while we were talking. When I was a young lawyer, I represented a woman in Baltimore City who had a bad slip and fall case, premises case. And I got her a nice bit of money. At the time, it was probably she netted about $75,000 or something after the case settled. And about 5 years later, maybe a little longer, I was going through the mall. I was going to get lunch. My office is in the suburbs, and it's in Howard County, Maryland. And I was walking through the mall, and she stopped me, and she said, Mr. Plaxen, and she told me her name, and I remembered who she was. And she said, you changed our lives.
We have a lot of stories
Right.
similar to that.
Yeah.
And it's so meaningful to make such an impact on people's lives. But, you know, and then you develop that relationship, and then you help their sister, and you help their brother, and you help their niece, and then their friend. And that's kind of how the business grows.
Yeah.
But I always found it difficult when someone came to me who was within a family of a client that we've helped, and their case was just not something we could bring. How do you deal with that issue?
When I opened my law firm, I was friends with an older lawyer in my community. And he said the hardest thing is not going to be decide which cases to take.
Which cases to reject?
Yeah.
It's very hard.
Yeah. He says it's you have to know when to say no.
Yes.
Because if you get involved in a case and you get people's hopes up, they're going to be very disappointed sometimes if you can't really win the case or if you can't help them. And that stuck with me.
Right.
That's
So
stuck
you've
in.
learned to say no.
Yeah, but sometimes you can't. Sometimes you just want to help people.
Yes, I agree. I feel like the information you've imparted today was very valuable to a lot of our listeners that don't actually practice in personal injury. It's an array of an audience in different fields, so I'm sure they'll find it very interesting.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm so lucky that you were in Puerto Rico, and I feel really privileged to have met you. And congratulations on your position at AHA. It's a wonderful organization. And if anyone wants to reach out to AHA, become a member, or donate, please look them up online. What's the website?
Justice.org.
Justice.org. Okay, well, thanks again for coming, and hopefully we see you again soon at one of the AHA meetings.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
It's so nice to meet
So
you.
nice to meet you. Thanks for watching On The Docket, and we hope to see you at the next episode. Please don't forget to click the link and subscribe. See you soon.